Hello everyone, it's Lionheart here, and today we're here to discuss the new and last official season of Gwent eSports. Recently on playgwent.com, the team posted an article explaining the new season, but I wanted to break it down a little, give my personal thoughts and that of some of the pros in the community. There'll be a link in the description to the article, so if you haven't checked it out, you can see it down there. So, we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, the happy, and of course, the sad, all in one big video. And as I've mentioned, you won't just be hearing from me, because I've chatted to a few of the pro players to try and get their take on the new season, the changes in rules, the changes in qualification styles, and things like that. So, how about first, we cover the format and the ways to qualify. So, qualification. At the end of Season 4, the pro player community was asked for some feedback and suggestions on how they would change Season 5, and the results, mixed in with, realistically, the resources available to the Gwent team in this season, have resulted in what we have now. The big one, the headline. There are less official events than last year. We had, last year, 3 Opens and the World Masters. This year, there are only 2 official events. Now, let's be honest. I don't think there's any way that I can spin that is a good thing. We all want more tournaments. They're good for everybody. They're good for the pro players. They're good for the casters. They're good for the community. But even the Gwent team want more. And I think we need to be realistic about that. I know I want more, but we are where we are with that. I'm planning as many community tournaments as possible this year, including meme tournaments, community tournaments, content creator tournaments, and even maybe a pro player tournament with an actual cash prize. But we'll talk about that later. These won't make up for the lack of opens, and I'm really sad to see them go, but the new format does have its upsides as well. There are changes where crown points are concerned. So, I'm really pleased to say that we get a place back at World Masters for the person finishing top of crown points throughout the entire season. I love this change. I had a great time at Masters 4, it was brilliant. But having the player who had the most crown points throughout the whole year not qualify to Masters, after the amount of time, effort and consistency that took, just felt wrong to me. Didn't matter who the player was, it was Pajabol for those that don't know, but it just didn't feel right, and I'm really pleased to see that this has been changed. I think it's a really good idea. I would like it to be extended a little bit further. I think one place isn't enough, but one is better than none. The end of season crown point rewards for the top 200 players in Pro Rank will also remain the same as in Season 4. You can see them on your screen now. So for first place, you're getting 40, for example. It did change from Season 3 to 4 as is demonstrated, but Season 4 to 5 will remain exactly the same. Now, crown point rewards for online qualifiers are being removed. Yes, you heard me right. No crown points for online qualifiers this time. Crown points are all about ladder. But not completely. The mid-season tournament participants will also be eligible for crown point rewards based on successful qualification to the group stage of that tournament will award 5 points. Group stage placements. Then, if you're third in each of the groups, you'll get 3 points. Fourth place in each of the groups will get 2 points. The playoff stages, second place will receive 10, third and fourth will receive 5th, 5th to 8th will receive 4 points. This is all very confusing as we haven't even covered the mid-season tournament yet, but I'm just breaking down what they told us in the article. Players who will qualify for World Masters, the 14-player segment, yes, 14-player, not the usual, we'll get there, will receive rewards based on successful qualification to the group stage. They will also receive 5 points. So, I've just let the cat out of the bag. There are 14 places at World Masters. How does that make sense? Well, one of them is based on crown point qualification. So we now have 13 places left to go. Let me show you the graphic that they put up and we can explain it a little bit easier. As you can see, there are qualifiers in February, March, April and May. They respond to the corresponding season before them, right? That makes sense. All of those qualifiers, the top 16 and top 64, will make up the players featuring in the Gwent mid-season tournament. So, what does this mean? Well, as I alluded to, as you can see, there are no more Opens, but we do have a huge mid-season tournament and an extended version of World Masters, which I will go into more detail about. To qualify for the mid-season tournament, you'll have to finish first or second in the top 16 or top 64s of February, March, April, or May. So that gives us 4 players per month qualifying. That takes us to 16 eligible players for the Gwent mid-season. So there are less tournaments, but finally more players competing in official events on the big stages. I'm a big fan of that. That is a change I think a lot of us have been looking for quite some time, and I'm really happy to see that that's finally hit. So, as you can guess, it's going to happen in the middle of the year. As you can see, it is happening sometime in early July. Now, prior to the playoff stage, which will be played exactly like Opens of the past, so 8 players, single elimination, effectively like a Gwent Open, 16 players, the ones that qualified, will battle it out in the dual tournament, also commonly known as a GSL format. So think like the play-in tournament we had before Masters 4. The first stage of the tournament will eliminate 8 of those players, and it'll be cast on content creators' channels as part of the event, very similarly to the way they handled the play-in. Why, yes, I do want to cast as many of those as possible. Thank you for asking. Now, the final 8 players will battle it out similarly to former events like the Gwent Open, and that, I believe, is on CD Projekt's channel exactly the same way. But let me show you the bracket graphic for how the first GSL stage is gonna go. So, the 16 participants to play in the group stage will be invited from the winners of the top 16 and top 64 qualifiers using the same rules as previously mentioned. The article on playgwent.com stated that in this format, 4 players will be randomly seeded into 4 groups, which will then use a double elimination bracket, which you can see on screen, to define the top 2 players from each group that will then be invited to participate in the mid-season tournament playoff stage, the 8-player final. But I can confirm that this seeding will in fact not be random, and I'm very delighted to hear that. Speaking to the game director, Vladimir Torstov, he confirmed to me that seeding is into groups. As discussions went on with the pro players, they want to have the seeding guided by crown points earned at the date of the draw show. So, for the 16 players, they will be seeded based on their current crown points at that stage, so there is definitely an incentive for them to be playing away for their seeding. Now, I prefer this hugely to random. I was really concerned initially that winning the top 16 qualifier gave you no advantage over someone finishing second place in the top 64 qualifier. I'm really happy to see this has been cleared up. Now let's talk prize pools, shall we? The prize pool of the mid-season tournament will be $20,000 as a base, plus retaining from last season 50% of the proceeds from sales of special eSports bundles that will be available in the shop prior to the tournament will also go to this. Now, that is the prize pool for the whole event. But we mentioned there are 16 players now, not 8. Well, those first 8 players that drop out, they're not going home empty-handed. $2,000 of the sum will be distributed among the 8 players who drop out at that stage. They don't make it to the final playoff stage, but they aren't going home empty-handed. I think that's a really good way to encourage more people to compete. Huge fan of this. I think it's a really good idea, and I'd have loved to see something like this earlier in Gwent's cycle. To be honest, it can really help people continue their journeys in eSports Pro, even for those relatively small amounts. It can make a big difference. So, I'm also happy to see the 50% of esports still going to it. Previously, Opens typically had about 2 months worth of sales, 6 to 8 weeks worth of sales going towards each individual Open. As a result, they also helped increase prize pools nicely. Well, for this event, we have 4 to 5 months of potential esports bundles that can go towards this prize pool, and that'll be the same for World Masters, so I can see, depending on how they deal with this, some pretty hefty prize pools for these 2 events. Personally, I think this is a great opportunity. I'd love to see them put back the old expansion pre-order content into the game and tag that to give the esports benefit. So I'm thinking the old boards that came along, you know you all missed that shit board. I still want it as well. They could reintroduce that into the game. It seems the perfect time now. I've asked them previously and was told no. tied to a pre-order and we think we want to keep it that way. But with Gwentfinity around the corner, I see no good reason not to do that. I really hope not only do they release those things into the shop for us to purchase, but I think it's a perfect time to pair that to support Gwent eSports. In my opinion, let's see if it happens. So, what's the takeaway from the mid-season? What do we know so far? Well, let's say it is the mid-season. Let me show you the bracket. Let me show you all of it all over again. We are now at the end. July is here. The mid-season tournament has taken place. We are most of the way through the year. We have just one person qualified out of the 14 people who are going to compete in the overall World Masters event. Now that's pretty big. That's a huge decision, and I have some thoughts about this. If I was personally designing a season of Gwent World Masters, let's say season 6, he dreams, personally I'd be trying to level the qualification methods a little bit more throughout the year. I'm so pleased to see Crown Point qualification as a thing again, and it's a big step up to 1 place from 0. Personally, I'd have liked a quarter of overall places for Masters being decided by Crown Points. I would then split the year up into 3 parts, into the 3 sections, quarters if you like, that the game has competitive series, in sets of qualifiers, so January to March, April to June, July to September, and each one of those would provide 25% of the people that would qualify. That's how I'd have done it. I think it would help the competitive scene stay a little bit more lively in the early part of the year, but I think they made it top-heavy for a reason. Because as we can see, it's July, we have 1 person qualified and 13 still to go. Well, I think this is to encourage a lot of former Gwent pros and brand new people to take a shot in the months July, August, and September to try to qualify for that pre-Masters tournament. In seasons past, you had to grind Gwent Ladder every single season. You had to play thousands of games to have a realistic shot at being in World Masters. But with so many places still to be decided, the final 6 of 8 making it to the grand final stage aren't decided until November, which I will explain shortly. They all come from the July, August, and September seasons. As a returning pro, you're thinking, you know what? I do want to be immortalized. I do want 1 final shot at being a Gwent World Master. Or for some of the previous champions, I want to be the only person to do it twice. Well, actually, they can jump back in at a pretty late stage and have a realistic shot at it, something that's never been possible before. I think those months are going to be very exciting. I think July all the way through until World Masters is going to be absolutely massive for Gwent. Now, similar changes in the qualification path are introduced to World Masters Season 5. There are 12 winners of the August to October qualifiers that will be placed in the 3 groups with 4 players, and each will play in the same double tournament format that I mentioned for the mid-season tournament. Obviously only 3 months of qualifiers, so hence 12 players, instead of the 4 months of qualifiers, giving us 16. We will have the same, half of them will drop out and the other half will qualify through. As a result, 6 of the players from that first stage will progress, 1 person from the mid-season tournament, and the overall Crown Point winner. They will make up the final 8 at World Masters. The graphic isn't very clear here, so let me fix that. This series that I'm talking about that has those players, that has the 12, it's not a separate tournament, it's literally part of World Masters. So it will likely take place in November, not December. Now November's blank on here, but World Masters is typically the first weekend of the month, always has been, I don't expect that to change. So I actually think we have the first part of this in November. I'm going to call this World Masters Part 1. I think this tournament deserves better. Or this stage of the tournament. I think this should be a tournament in its own right. I think whether you stick to play-in, make it playoffs because it sounds better, whatever it is, it follows the same format as the mid-season tournament to allow people then to qualify through. I know the mid-season tournament is also both stages, but personally, I think it's the biggest opportunity to qualify for a World Masters in Gwent history in terms of number of places. It's also the last official chance to qualify for an official Gwent World Masters tournament. I want to see a huge amount more for this event than is currently planned, And hopefully that will develop in the next few months. I want to see it have its own name. I want to see it have its own title. I want to see a lot of focus on it. Personally, I think it deserves it. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Would you love the Gwent playoffs in November as a tournament in its own right? I know I would. So the first half of the event, we'll call it part 1. We're going to eliminate the first 6 players. This is going to be cast in the same style as the play-in tournament was in Season 4 and the first section of the mid-season tournament. So, across all of your favourite Twitch channels. Yes, shameless plug, you should be following me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Lionheart. Why are you not already? Imagine, if you want to see that tournament, you probably should be following. Now, I will do everything I can to make sure every one of those is cast. If I can cast the whole thing and create a big event, rotate partners, do whatever I have to, I will do my best to do that. I really hope we see a lot more for this. So, how does the prize pool work for this World Masters? It's the big one, and similar to the mid-season tournament, the total prize pool will have both elements. It's double that of mid-season, so a base prize pool of $40,000, and again, 50% of funds generated by sales of all the esports bundles will go towards it. This time, there is also money for the players who are dropping out in part 1, so 1,500 USD of that will be distributed amongst the 6 players. It was 2,000 for 8, 1,500 for 6, it all checks out. And if they fail to advance into that final stage, there is still something to be said for that. They've still competed officially at World Masters and taken prizes in their esports career. Love to see it. Now, this prize pool, the base of it is $10,000 lower than Masters 4. Obviously, that's a shame. But it's also still a pretty impressive prize pool. We saw Masters 4 effectively double its prize pool, and several Opens more than double theirs last season, thanks to the community purchasing those esports bundles. And with less tournaments, but the same number of months, in theory, those tournaments could have bigger prize pools. I think that's very possible, and I'm really hopeful we can surpass the totals we had last year just to really give this game the fanfare that it deserves. So many of us have loved this and want to celebrate it. I think it's a great opportunity to re-release those bundles. I would love to see it. I hope that happens. If you agree with me, please let me know, and I will keep on banging on about it. So, there is one other thing. Now, I'm going to call it the Grand Finals. In December, final 8 players to determine the World Masters Season 5 champion of Gwent. This deserves a big show. Yes, it will be on CD Projekt's Twitch channel, of course it will. Now, maybe I'm huffing the world's biggest supply of copium here, but I'd love this to be in person again, and I would love this event to be in person. I think it's a fitting way. If the official esports scene is no more, it would be a pleasure, an honor, and a privilege to bring as many people together as possible. Now, is that possible? Who knows? Is it likely? Who knows? Vlad, make it happen. Come on, I'm talking directly to you. Who knows? I know for a fact a lot of people from this community, past and present, would travel to be in attendance for that, and I think it would be incredible. The Gwent Tavern is regularly repurposed these days for, cyberpunk information and stuff like that, but it'll always be the Gwent Tavern. You know it, and so do I. Well, you've had a lot from me. I've tried to go through and break this down as much as possible. It is very complicated. It is very confusing. And I think the article was all the information, but not necessarily as easy to show you. So hopefully I've done a good job of explaining that to you. But if you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. You don't just want to hear from me, right? So what do the pros think of these changes? Are they going to change their tact? How are they going to go at trying to become the World Masters champion? And what do they think of these changes? Well, the first person I asked is World Masters 2 champion, and of course Gwent legend, Pajabol. Is he going to play? How does he feel about it? And well, let's hear from him. So what did Pajabol have to say? Well, first thing he told me is that he is, of course, planning to continue playing in Season 5. He then said, well, I guess it's a bit disappointing that there are only 2 tournaments. Although I do like the fact that they have more players and the format of the tournaments has a group stage element as well. I also like that they brought back the top 1 crown point reward, of course, especially since it allows the top crown point player to skip group stages at World Masters. However, I'm not a fan of so many people making it to Masters from that qualifier. I much prefer a system in which 4 people from the mid-season tournament would have qualified and make it only 1 person from each top 64 that would qualify. Now, personally, I can see the balance of this, and I understand from a pro player's perspective who's playing all season why he would want that level and that balance. I mentioned something similar earlier, and I can understand that. I alluded to it earlier. I wonder if the decision is to put as much emphasis and as much attention on those final few months, bring as many eyes back to the game pre-Gwentfinity to help Gwentfinity have as many eyes on it as possible. That's my thoughts. Maybe I'm wrong. Now, Kerpeten also has been in touch, and I spoke to him. Love him. I love the energy from him. He gives me OG Tailbot vibes. So, what did he have to say? Personally, I didn't read the changes much because beating other people will always be enough. But generally, I am sad about less tournaments because it is a card game after all. Even if you're better than the other players, luck can be a deciding factor, and to offset that, you've just got to play in more tournaments. Yet, I am happy about crown points mattering. It makes ladder more grinding, but more interesting. I would prefer more early locking of a place at Masters, being possible though, as you might have to focus on some personal stuff through the year, and grinding for the entire year can be really tiresome. It can feel like it's effectively a race between who has more time of the top few players in the world. I would much prefer to have had 3 places for crown points, but 1 is still a huge step forward. I find it hard to disagree on those points. I would have liked more as well. Over the balance of it, it's interesting, but it is still, as he mentions, a step forward. Danirai is the next pro who's took some time to talk to me, and I'm really pleased that he did. He had to say that he thinks the resources available, CDPR have done a great job with planning Season 5. There are only 2 tournaments, but finally more than 8 spots in them, which means more people will have a chance to at least play on the official tournament scene before eSports competition officially isn't a thing. I also like the change with the first crown point player getting a spot at Masters. Although less tournaments and not competing for top 1 crown points and qualifying earlier this year means a lot of players don't actually have a reason to play until the mid-season tournament. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to try and compete for crown points, as they don't do much in the long run if you're not going all in, and I'm not sure if you just qualify to the tournament and go from there. Oh, and the level of qualifiers has a potential issue. It could be the worst top 64 of all time in October, because in theory, the other best players have already qualified over the year. Now that's an interesting point. Will that be the case? Will it be who's left to qualify? Because last year we had the opposite to that. We had a lot of very, very good players who hadn't made it yet, and who in the end didn't make it even. Will it be returning legends? What will it be? And will that player end up taking the title? Who knows? Who knows? Very interesting perspective. Very, very grateful that Danirai took the time to talk to me about this as well. And I kind of echo his thoughts. There's lots I would change. Overall, I think they did a very good job. There are still things I would tweak. But, yeah. And last, but definitely not least, we have the current, reigning, defending Gwent Master, Spellinbee. And he says that he'll be playing competitively this season, but he doesn't have too many opinions on the changes, other than he's going to have to focus a lot more on ladder. He made it to Masters because of qualifications and opens, and the crown points that were previously attributed to them, of course, are not now. As he said, he rarely made top 16, so higher placements will give him more opportunity for qualifying into mid-season and into World Masters. Well, that's what our pros have to say. A bit of a balanced view, some positive changes, some there's no way around it that we're sad about, and there's some very interesting points raised. We're all sad for less tournaments, but pleased that more people can qualify into them than previously. And a big consensus on the crown points actually having a place. Huge fan of that. I don't think anybody's going to view that as negative. We would all like that to have gone maybe a step further even. But you know what? It's still a huge, huge step forward. The really interesting point is the opposite views of how they're going to play the game. Some of them saying I can grind all year and that now makes sense. Others saying I'm not going to drop in until after mid-season because why would I need to? It's going to be really, really curious to see who chooses what style. So, as we stand, Season 5 this season is the final official season of Gwent eSports. Will it mark the end of competitive Gwent? Who knows? We'll need to see what Gwentfinity brings and how many people still actually want to play the game competitively and otherwise. Now, I know I, and many others, will be here as long as people are interested in the game, and creating a community Season 6, actively searching for sponsors, could be a very interesting prospect to explore closer to the time if the interest is there. I know for a fact I would very happily spearhead something like that, but ultimately it's far too early to tell whether that is going to be a realistic ambition or not. If enough people want to watch, enough people want to play, and we can make that happen, why would you not? Why would you? Only time will tell. But until then, my friends, you can find me on twitch.tv/Lionheart jamming some Gwent.